Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 20th. Wow, we're almost getting to the end of November, and I guess we're a week away from being a day away from Thanksgiving Day. And as you know, Thanksgiving creep working its magic across the land. People now taking off the whole week. Everybody's in the supermarkets, of course, grabbing up the last food that there will be available before, I guess, everything collapses after January 20th at some point. Stock up. Get a couple extra turkeys. Prices skyrocketing. Turkey is like 4 cents a pound. But you know how it is. You should be going into the supermarket screaming about high prices now anyway. I thought we were going to get lower prices. What the hell happened around here? No one's going to know the difference. And in another true sign of the apocalypse, as I sign on to see what's going on online this morning in places where people gather their news who listen to this show, and just checking in over at Daily Kos, and they have no control over this stuff, and you shouldn't hold them accountable for it necessarily. But it is kind of interesting to see that the big banner ad across the top of the page at the moment is for Trump National Golf Club. At least it is here for me, nearby. I'm within striking distance of the Virginia Club, which they advertise as being in Washington, D.C. It is not. But you know that story, and I guess that area will experience higher than usual volume of traffic every once in a while. I have to say that during the first Trump administration, I really almost never noticed any sort of disruption, which is terrific. Hope it stays that way. But at any rate, a sign of the apocalypse. You sign on to Daily Kos and there's a big Trump National Golf Club ad across the top. Okay, not their fault and whatever, but okay. Just an interesting way of starting the day. All right, and I wanted to make sure that all of the technology is working. I can take a look and see, everything is A-okay as far as justice can tell. It's the sadness inside that he can't read, but the microphones are working. I reset everything yesterday to make room in my afternoon schedule to join Cliff Schechter. A lot of you probably know and follow Cliff Schechter on his YouTube live stream, like the kids are doing these days. And I thought that might be an interesting, and it is, it's wild, and there's a big chat going on, and I can't actually pay attention to both things at once, but it was very interesting, and we had a good time, and it's been a long time since I've spoken with him. But occasionally we keep in touch back and forth when he's working on a project or something, or just has something that's real exciting to him on social media. He's making the big switch over to Blue Sky. Seems like everybody's making their move these days. So we're in good company, and the company is growing. I guess the Blue Sky company is growing. I mean, my company on Blue Sky. That is to say, the people who keep me company there, and that's all of you. And thanks to those of you who have, in the last couple of days when rejoining things in Blue Sky, or just prompted by I don't know what, have said, hey, by the way, I'm out here listening, and it's good to know, because sometimes you have no idea, and you just sort of feel like you're speaking out into the void. And, although occasionally we get, well, for instance, we have the dedicated following of, say, the mighty OCD, who not every day, but quite a lot of days, will help us by what are we doing? Skeeting out that we're on the air, where to find us. That link to Netroots Radio's live stream is, of course, extremely important. Netroots Radio, doesn't have the heft of YouTube. It isn't someplace that people just wander by yet. Anyway, maybe we can build it up into something. Everybody's always screaming about, we got to be building liberal messaging infrastructure, and we build it, and, you got to be able to find it. And we got to maybe find some way of making it easier to discover, perhaps. But in the meantime, we'll tell you the stories that you need to hear about from the perspective from which we think you might enjoy most hearing from them. Greg Dworkin will be around with his Rafto stories. There are more terrible cabinet picks, and they are nuts. And I guess if there's any criterion which appears to rival rapiness for getting your name included on the list for the Cabby Nut, it would be, I guess, television stardom or television connection in some way. Pete Hegseth, TV guy. I don't know who else. Oh, well, so the latest appointments. Dr. Oz is going to be in the Trump administration, and I guess if you thought that was likely, and I guess everybody must have, because failed Republican candidate with no particular job in politics anymore, but also TV stardom and conservative-ish. So, let's plug him into the program. Not at HHS, that's RFK Jr., alphabet soup here today. And not at Surgeon General. Worse news about that one yet to come. That one sounds like it's going to Joseph Ladapo, the Surgeon General of Florida, another anti-vaxxer and COVID truther and wannabe Trumpy kind of person. Looks like it may pay off for him. But Mehmet Oz gets plugged in at, what is it, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid? I don't even know what it is anymore. This changed designations a couple of times. It's CMS, right? Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. What do they do exactly? Well, we'll find out as we read a little bit about Dr. Oz. And also another television stardom connection thingy here going. A holdover from the last administration, Linda McMahon, who I believe was at the Small Business Administration last time. And rather than plug her back in where she actually has some experience or something like that, they will plug her in at education, I think, which I never got any indication that she had any interest. And she doesn't. And, you shouldn't mistake the fact that she's been picked for Secretary of Education for the fact that she's, got any expertise or has any particular interest in improving the education of the vast majority of the kids in the country. The education department doesn't really even deal, of course, directly with the education of the vast number of kids in the country, much more involved in the finance of post-secondary education. But, of course, you need to have world wrestling entertainment person on hand, I guess, to wrangle all of those school nurses who are giving out free gender transition surgery inside of a day on an outpatient basis and sending kids home mid-afternoon, and of course somebody has to scoop all those litter boxes. All right, none of that is happening, just to be clear about that. And but what is happening is Greg Dworkin is here. We can hear that there are stories ready to burst forth. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hey, good morning. So Linda McMahon is a nutmegger. She's a Connecticut person.
Like the guy from Pennsylvania.
In regard to your introduction.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, it's nice you speak with Cliff now and again. I talk to Cliff online maybe a couple times a month because I use some of his videos on the Daily Cliff.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they tend to cover the same topics that I'm sort of collating.
We're all concerned about the same things.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a theme, but that's been true even before the election. But getting back to Linda McMahon and your introduction, you mentioned, TV personalities, and that's sort of true. But I think that the bigger uniting factor in regard to who he picks, aside from being under indictment or investigation, is that they're grifters.
Oh, yeah. Well, sure.
Ramaswamy, grifter.
Yes, no doubt about that.
Oz.
I thought that without saying.
Linda McMahon. Why should I do education when I can teach you how to grift?
Sure.
I mean, that's what Worldwide Wrestling is. It teaches you that lies are truth, and reality is what we make it.
That's true. Good education for the kids these days. Don't get skills, lie and steal.
Exactly. McMahon was appointed, according to Politico, to the Connecticut State Board of Education. And she was there for like a couple of weeks, and then she dropped out and made a failed run for the Senate. So she's good at dropping out. That makes her an education person.
Where's
and
Sarah
also,
Palin?
she funded and was board chair of the America First Policy Institute. You'll love this.
Yeah.
This is a conservative think tank which stood for everything Loudoun County.
It's a tank.
Had to talk about in regard to, parents first.
Yeah,
parents' rights
great.
Movement is
yeah. Oh, I'm aware of that one. Yeah, we, of course, right. So these are the people who, parents' rights to protest against things that aren't happening in schools, protest against some things that are happening in schools but you're not helping, and, generally speaking, also a great way of stealing tax revenues and pumping it into private schools.
But also she's very into Pell Grants and says not everybody has to go to college. You should get the training programs. And that's actually fairly popular and a reasonable position to take. In fact, the Biden administration took that position. And, she's one of the, as bad as she is, more normal. There's the normal group, and then there's the sex offenders. And I don't think she's why you're being considered for cabinet.
Oh, is she? I don't know.
You shouldn't be head of DOJ. You should be prosecuted by a DOJ group of cabinet members. And in regard to that, it's interesting that my conservative friend Dave Mastio over at the Kansas City Star, who in the end turned out to be a never-Trumper because he just couldn't, says, if you think about it, he writes, putting Oz, a paid shill for the health supplement industrial complex on TV and the internet, in charge of the health care of half the Americans makes perfect sense, not because he's a surgeon. It's because he's a TV star with the backing of Oprah.
Aha.
I mean, even Fox News knows a lot of this stuff is bogus. And so what he says is it makes sense that Trump wants to appoint these people through his recess appointment power, which puts him in place only temporarily for up to a year. He doesn't need him for long, just for a season or two to juice the ratings and keep feeding chaos. So his whole point is, if you look at his individual picks, each cast member will provide dramatic tension for a Washington, D.C. version of The Apprentice. How far will Gaetz go in prosecuting Trump's enemies before state prosecutors turn on him? Tune in to see if an alleged sex offender can serve as the nation's top law enforcement officer from behind bars. The new episode next week, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think he's onto something in the sense that not only does Trump see it as entertainment because he's got the mind of a 6-year-old, but he's very much interested in distracting you with people like Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth, so that Stephen Miller and Tom Homan can do their thing. And so, that's really what one has to keep in mind. The only good news, if there is any good news, is that a lot of the institutions in Washington aren't super strong with guardrails that will prevent fascism. That's not what they do. What they do is yes minister style, stubborn, I don't want to change-ness, which is going to help tremendously, for example, at the Pentagon.
Okay,
whoever's there. It's going to help tremendously at DOJ, whoever's there. I don't think that everybody's going to resign en masse and protest and then allow Trump to fill it with political appointees. I think the opposite. I think they're going to dig in and say, we're not budging. And so, screw you. We'll wait you out.
Well, of course, Trump's hope,
whether
or not
he's knowing people who work there.
Right. Well, but I do as well, and Trump's hope here is that he doesn't have to leave it up to them to decide whether to dig in and then drag their heels. He hopes he can identify who they are and expel them from their jobs and replace them anyway. But it is a huge job, and there are an awful lot of them. And if they decide to wait it out, it may be years before they figure out what's going on, unless they do things like everybody in the whole building is fired and you get to reapply for your job. I know that's their fantasy, but I don't know if they know how to make it work yet, nor do I know how long it will take to convince courts to give in.
The only saving grace is that they're stupid and incompetent. But
yes, thank God.
What they want to do is awful.
Now thank God our leadership is stupid and incompetent. Terrific.
Yeah, that's what we elected. Maybe we have to. Wanted.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. They didn't. Oh, they did ask me. All right. Well, the problem is they ask some of other neighbors in the country.
Again, as the numbers come in and as California comes in, it's going to turn out to be a relatively close election where a majority did not vote for this.
Yes.
And so we'll see what happens.
That has changed, and I think, it doesn't make a huge difference. It doesn't change much, but it is like mentally, if you're keeping tabs on this thing. And again, I want to say it one more time because, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, the numbers are, and they continue to pile up. And this is like 2-3 elections in a row here when we have sort of had pronounced for us the grand meaning of the election based on very incomplete numbers that later don't hold up in terms of this narrative. This idea of an election night landslide falling apart as the votes actually get counted. And so the margin between Trump and Harris is under 2 million votes.
And shrinking because it's all California vote.
Right.
So it's just going to continue to shrink.
And he no longer, while he has won the popular vote, he has not gotten the vote of more than half of the electorate. And so that's kind of a semi-important point out there, too. You know, if you're going to be out there calling for mandate, not only a mandate, but a mandate to throw out the constitutional order and replace it with whatever the hell he feels like doing. Like one of the narrowest election victories in history, and only a plurality of the vote, et cetera. You know, they'll lie about what it means, but, you know, to the extent it matters what the real numbers are, over the last week or two, things have changed, and the shape of the election and how you should regard it has changed, but the media has already written those stories.
Yeah. In any case, these particular
but they are reporting these numbers
are grifters, and some of them are in trouble. I don't think that Gaetz is going to wind up being nominated.
I have something for you on that.
He'll be nominated back because Trump wants him. I don't think he'll be confirmed.
I see what
I'm
you
not
mean.
sure
Okay.
about Hegseth. The others probably yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so there will be a bit of a chaos cabinet, but again, not quite how they intended.
Now, there's time for him to not be nominated. Now, all these things are these people are designees. They have not yet had their nominations written down and sent in.
Although reports are he won't change his mind on Gaetz, which I think is true, because it's to his benefit to have a head of Department of Justice that he can blackmail.
Yes, but there are so many people he could blackmail. But yeah, I mean, if something happens disastrous to Trump from his perspective, there's still time to not nominate him. And by the way, somebody has pointed out to me, this is an interesting thing, and you know, it's not definitive one way or the other, but they're pointing out, he resigned early. Of course, Gaetz did as soon as he was rumored to have been the pick, right? And Trump, I guess, tells him yes, the rumor is true, so he quits Congress just in time to block them from being able to release the ethics report. We all know that part of the story. But keep an eye on it. It is procedurally speaking, he has submitted a letter of resignation and he has resigned from the 118th Congress. That's the current Congress. But remember, he has just been elected to the 119th Congress. Down in Florida, they may yet be preparing to issue him a certificate of election. If he were to be booted, withdraw, lose the nomination in a floor fight, technically he can come back with that certificate of election and ask to be sworn into the 119th Congress.
Right.
The verbiage of his letter, I looked it up, says he's resigning immediately from the 118th Congress. He does say that it is not his intention to take the oath in the 119th Congress, but it doesn't say, I'll refuse.
But what happens to the ethics report of the 118th Congress if he comes back to the 119th Congress?
Yes, and that's the next question, and I don't know offhand.
That report, in terms of what happens to it, may be determined as soon as today. They
That's
may announce
true.
what they're going to do with it.
And my other thinking is...
let's say they have it out there.
Yeah,
let's say they actually have it out
there.
Sure. How does he come back to the 119th Congress?
He just walks in. How does, what was his name? David Vitter come back to a standing ovation. That's how David Vitter comes back into the Senate. And everybody, if you're old enough to remember that one,
but in this
Matt
case,
Gaetz is capable of almost anything.
He would,
but he is widely hated.
I don't doubt that. But look, if they release it today, or they announce that they're going to release it soon, today that they announce that they are going to release it at some point soon, and it gets released and it says what people think it says, he's not coming back.
No, I mean, I hope not, and I hope he hopes not too. But anyway, I'm just putting it out there.
Tied to Trump.
That is a weird thing.
Trump's person comes back to the 119 Congress because everything about Gaetz is about Trump. Trump's not going to want that.
No,
that's not the
probably
kind of
not.
publicity he wants.
Although, they're very weird. They're very crazy. They're very short on bodies to put together a majority. Ron DeSantis, I guess, will tell us what's going to happen by how quickly he moves to call a special election for that seat
needed,
and for
right?
Walz.
In that scenario, special election, because
they don't
governors
appoint.
can't replace House members.
Right. So
Only Senate members.
Just an interesting and weird thing. If in the universe wherein Trump and his weirdos will do almost anything, despite that would be ridiculous. No one would ever. Well, okay, probably not.
But again,
I'm just throwing it out there.
He wants you talking about, so you don't notice what
I did it.
Stephen Miller's up to.
Stephen Miller, that guy. Oh, I have I knew I had I've got a new sound effect for him, but I forgot where I put it. Oh, here it is. Stephen Miller.
Bald asshole?
Yeah, that's the guy. I borrowed that one from Curb Your Enthusiasm from years ago.
Wasn't even me.
Yeah, he didn't say it, and this is
That's
you.
bullshit.
But I decided not to go with the bleep on this one because I understand that in the Trump era, people want profanity. That's, I think. I don't know. Also, I didn't really. It's not funny if you bleep that one.
Yeah. Anyway, when Axios was looking at Hegseth over at the Pentagon and noting how stubborn they are to change, they do note successful change agents as defense secretary get to change what the DoD spends money on, even how it spends money.
Sure.
But making changes through training, doctrine, operations is really hard because that's the purview of the uniformed military, and the defense secretary doesn't get a lot to say about that.
Right. And these guys think that you can do anything.
Embrace Christian national. Well, no, it's not what we do.
And I didn't write that down. I don't know why I didn't. I didn't hear you, I guess. There's a lot of people who can drag their feet. And technically, these top people have the power to push and insist that these things happen, and sometimes, eventually, they'll get through. But they all believe that every federal official has superpowers, starting with the president, and that the president can designate them to have superpowers too, and it just doesn't really function that way.
Let's see, 8, 12, 16. I'm trying to remember who was president from 2016 through 2020? Who was that?
Nobody.
I mention that because Ashton Carter, you remember him? Was a U.S. Defense Secretary who really wanted to change how things worked. And you don't even remember him now because he failed. McNamara is another guy who wanted to change everything. And people remember him for being an obnoxious know-it-all, very much into the Vietnam War. But how much did he really change the Pentagon?
Not that much.
So there have been strong personalities there, but it's not easy to change the bureaucracy. Again, that's why I always refer to yes minister.
All right. Yeah,
there are ways around it. And,
there have been a lot of very strong personalities as defense secretary, and they changed the culture.
Get it done.
Yes.
They did a little, but it takes time. It's over a long period of time.
Right.
You can't just send under Bill Clinton, you can't just send a new department defense secretary there and say, okay, let's just move to don't ask, don't tell, and then we'll move to accepting everything. It's just not how it works.
I mean, Donald Rumsfeld was something of a force of nature himself, not a good force, but and he came into the Pentagon like, I'm going to tear this place up. I don't even want a chair from my desk. I stand all day long, because somehow that projects something. But standing doesn't really make anybody do anything, and yelling at them didn't do it either.
Right. The other thing about Gaetz and Hegseth as nominees, possibly even Gabbard, although I think that she's on the dark side of this, is that if you have Gaetz and Hegseth and argue about them and reluctantly say, okay, I'll listen to your wise counsel, Senate, you get to have everybody else, because you're not going to fight on everything. They're only going to pick one or two battles. That means you get Putin's Gabbard as defense national, the national intelligence director.
They should just nominate
And that's what
Vladimir Schmooten as CIA director or something.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, it's the different guy. It's not who you're thinking of. Schmooten.
Yeah.
Different guy. Totally American. Hello, I am American, you know.
Yeah,
that guy.
And at the FBI, we'll put Machine Gun Pelly.
Sure, why not? It could be anybody. Well, okay. It gets worse and worse. What are you going to do? But it's interesting. A full cabinet of lightweight idiots is something we haven't tried before.
No, but Hungary has, and so has Putin. And that's basically how they like to do things, and that's why you do what you do, and that's why you have lightweights there. You don't want anybody. You don't want a Nikki Haley who, even though she's wrong, thinks she has her own, base of support to run on. You want somebody with no support who's completely and totally beholden to you, if not capable of being blackmailed. And that's who you want. That's what he's doing.
Also, maybe somebody who's kind of used to just hanging out in their mansion and doesn't really want to come to work all the time.
I don't know.
That's helpful. So, okay, we got a lot of those as well.
Yeah. And anyway, so what happens is, okay, you don't get Kennedy at HHS, but like you said, you get Ladapo, who questioned the safety of COVID vaccines, resisted public health recommendations, leading contender for a senior role. And you get Casey Means, former surgeon turned wellness influencer. I mean, again, these are grifters.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know who they are, but they've been playing their public for years to get rich, and that's who Trump likes to have around him.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's quite alarming all by itself, right? If I don't know anything about this person, I don't know who they are. Well, Donald Trump knew to pick them out of obscurity to implement his policies. Isn't that kind of frightening all by itself, that Donald Trump knew about this person and you didn't? Oh, you know what?
So after the break,
that's enough,
folks. We're going to talk a little bit about Blue Sky.
Okay. Oh, all right. Terrific.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. We're going to move into a discussion of Blue Sky. It's blue, it's got sky, and people are moving to it.
So there's when I put together the pundit roundup for this morning,
yes,
there was a couple of things that caught my eye. One was a Paul Krugman article in the Times. That would be the New York Times.
Oh,
the dollar still has
time is it there?
X, not so much, and talked about how the network is essentially being ruined. And there's another New York Times piece to accompany that called How Blue Sky, Alternative to X and Facebook, is Handling Explosive Growth. And by explosive growth, John Byrne Murdoch from the Financial Times, a British pub, as they like to say.
Well, not that kind. Yeah.
Says this is really getting quite remarkable. Blue Sky user numbers have doubled in the past week and now total 3.5 million across the U.S. and the U.K., and the number of people deleting their ex-Twitter account remains way up. I'm still there. I haven't deleted it. I still use it, but I don't, post a whole lot there anymore. And the next chart is particularly notable. Despite a massive head start, Blue Sky's overtaken Threads. Threads is awful for politics. They made it deliberately awful for politics. They won't support it. They won't help you find other people. I just find it dreadful. So I tried using Threads. I haven't deleted my account, but I don't post.
I don't think anybody's
just like I don't post to Mastodon. I haven't deleted my account. The trouble with Mastodon is I literally have to teach myself how to use it every time I sign on.
I haven't had that issue, but it's hard to spend time on. I go there and I announce things like, hey, the show's going to be on, or here's the show for today, but otherwise, Blue Sky has become, that was just an easier transition.
Blue Sky's become the alternative. It's got down, side to it.
I think.
Doesn't have all the features Twitter has yet, but they're being pushed to make some of those. But the explosive growth has really been remarkable. I mean, every day, there's a post, we got another million. Oh, we got another million. Remember when we said, we got another 1.5 million? And that was just yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, it's been tremendous. And so this chart shows the spike in the growth that Blue Sky was just sort of hovering around, I don't know what, looks like about, 200,000 users for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, somewhere mid-October, things begin to rock, and then, of course, after the election, now
Jack Dorsey, who started Twitter, started Blue Sky, but he's not the CEO anymore.
No.
There's a lady CEO.
Yeah.
However, it's still pretty much funded.
Goodness. Yes.
By what? Crypto and weirdos.
I think all these things are.
Why should I go to Blue Sky? Look who's funding them. And it's, my answer is, look, whoever starts something's probably going to be rich and you won't like them. So, what's your point?
There is that. Yes. I don't know anything about who's making money off of Blue Sky, but right now they're not, as far as I know, they're not selling my posts to an AI machine, and they don't skew their algorithm in favor of Nazis.
Speaking of, not Nazis, but crypto, it's likely Trump will put somebody who's really pro-crypto as head of the SEC, Security and Exchange.
Yes,
probably. Every possible thing you could think of that would be really bad, Trump's going to try and do, just so you know.
Yes, anybody who's corrupt but is giving money to Trump and has problems with the law will be put in charge of the agency that has arrested them.
Right. So in that regard, I did want to mention Blue Sky because it is doing well. If you want to come over there, David and I are both there, and 18 million other people. But the most important thing is we're there. So I just want to mention that it takes a little getting used to, but if you're from Twitter, it won't be that hard. So the Bulwark has this piece by Jonathan Last. It's time to consider the worst case scenario. Let's go to the bad place together.
Oh boy.
The conventional wisdom seems to have settled in on the view that this is all bad, but it's also ultimately fine because, the Pentagon is stubborn and so on and so forth. And Jonathan Last says, I view this as a dangerous failure of imagination. So I'm going to lay out two big ideas for you today. The first is something like the worst case scenario. It isn't a literal worst case scenario like we have a nuclear holocaust and everybody dies, but what I'm going to describe as a 90th percentile variant. A set of outcomes that are the worst of the unlikely but not black swan timeline. And the second idea is that if Trump were actively pursuing such a set of outcomes, he wouldn't do it any differently than he's doing right now.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So be warned, this isn't going to be fun.
Right. It's very difficult to know. Well, go ahead. I'll be out of the way here. Go on.
Right. So I don't know if you remember the name Freddie DeBoer. I haven't heard it in years.
Yes.
Libertarian type. Last week, Freddie DeBoer wrote that liberals shouldn't panic because sure, Trump would be bad, but he wouldn't be that bad. And Last writes, is that a joke? Because I'm sorry, but if you look at Trump's second term and put wildlife and environmental protection in your top 100 concerns, something's deeply wrong with your priorities. Okay. The assertion that Trump's first term wasn't as terrible as people predicted. He fired the federal government's pandemic response team, talked about injecting people with bleach, and killed 1 million effing Americans. And then he assembled an armed mob and directed them to march on the Capitol. What do you mean it wasn't that bad?
It was rather bad. And then they smeared feces on the wall of the Capitol. It got worse and worse.
Right. And DeBoer, like many people grappling with Trump 2.0, is making a bunch of category errors and failing to imagine what a true worst-case scenario would be. And let me tell you, it has nothing to do with tax cuts or the NLRB. Let's think categorically.
Wait, it does have something to do with the NLRB if you're talking about recess appointments, but that's obscure.
Anything that Trump might do that's easily reversible by a successor doesn't make the list.
Okay.
So putting a suboptimal person in charge of the FTC, we should be so lucky. Okay. First of all, you can't deport millions of people because somebody would have to accept the people. No country would be willing to take on millions of refugees from America.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of countries, but none who want to cooperate.
Number 2, camps are actual political liabilities. If Trump can't ship millions of immigrants out, he'd have to put them in camps, and how's that going to work? And where will camps big enough to house 15 million immigrants be located? Well, California, obviously. How quickly could they be built? How much would they cost? To give you a sense of scale, the entire existing prison population in the U.S. is 1.2 million people. Yes. So to house 12 million immigrants would require 10 times America's entire existing incarceration infrastructure. And that seems unlikely. Seems like there's money to be made there, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he writes that's unlikely to happen. Number 3?
Right. I mean, it is right. And it leads to a lot of darker places, but we'll get there.
Rounding up millions of immigrants would cause an economic downturn. It would be broad-based economic pain. In short, the great immigrant roundup of 2025 is unlikely to happen. Instead, I expect that Trump's deportation scheme would be a lot like the wall that Mexico paid for, or Ron DeSantis' election fraud police force.
Yeah, I know. Okay, sure.
Right? Nothing changes. Everybody's happy. But if Trump really did round up 20 million immigrants and stick them in open-air prisons in Texas and Arizona, it would be a human tragedy of immense proportion and still wouldn't be the worst-case scenario.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, the real worst case scenario is that they round those guys up and then there's nowhere to send them and they decide, well, we don't want to feed them.
Right.
And we won't.
And last writes, he considers RFK's appointment to head HHS similarly. Now, I have my own feelings about that. Let's say that RFK takes the job, does his worst, imposes a shutdown on the study of infectious disease, eliminates vaccine mandates, changes rules in a way that's to radically lower vaccination rates, bad outcomes, kids get sick and die. But again, this wouldn't change the American system of government, and successive administration could course correct. Now, I don't find eliminating public health such an easy thing to get around. When you're dead, you're dead, you know.
Yeah, there is that. And I mean, while you can reverse policy, it may take 50 years to get anywhere close to where you were.
Yeah. But skipping over that, he said, no. The real worst case scenario is Trump spends his energies waging war against the federal government itself. More January 6th stuff, in other words. He takes control of the institutional levers of power and fundamentally changes the system. Schedule F. Department of Justice, Department of Defense. And that's why his 2 secretaries that he wants there are such a BFD, and it's not just hand-waving, distract you with these so we do those. Mm-hmm. He actually wants them there. He wants Hegseth, he wants Gaetz, and to me, Hegseth and Gaetz are the 2 that you have to stop.
Okay. I'm up for that. Yeah, they will, well, every time that does come up, it's a funny thing. You still have to say, but then still Tulsi Gabbard too, but for different reasons.
Well, again, as I wrote in the Pundit Roundup today, it takes a Matt Gaetz to say Pete Hegseth isn't his worst choice. It takes Matt Gaetz to say Tulsi Gabbard isn't his worst choice. They're awful. It takes Matt Gaetz to say RFK isn't his worst choice. These are terrible choices. Yeah. Gaetz is so much worse than them.
I mean, ordinarily, on its face, everyone else competent and normal. Dr. Oz is monumentally stupid choice for anything. Like, what do you know about anything? Get out of here. Yeah. Everybody, really, honestly, is sort of like, you know what? I'm approving him because I don't even want to know who comes next in line.
Musk and Ramaswamy in the Department of doesn't exist. You know, they're second level.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, so far, no indication that they'll have any mechanism by which to get anything done. They'll try all sorts of extra legal ones, maybe.
Good luck.
I guess, but I mean, you can't just go in there and say,
self-funding. Go ahead, self-fund your department.
Right, I'll pay everybody to work at this department. No. Well, yeah, and that's part of the game and part of it. Well, as much as scary as it is and as much as you have to take things seriously, I'm tired of being told don't take them literally or seriously or whatever. But, there is, again, the Trump pattern. Trump purports to be implementing a lot of things, but he sometimes forgets or watches the Gorilla Channel or can't do it or just says he's already done it when he hasn't. So. Yeah, it's entirely possible it comes out
if
better.
This is too long and you don't want to read the whole thing, what Last is saying is, look, you step back and look at the big picture. He puts Gaetz to break justice. He puts Hegseth to break defense and make it more amenable to what Trump wants to do domestically. Mm-hmm. And then he unveils his real plans, which are to break the Senate and break the Supreme Court. And the Senate, of course, it's pretty obvious to see how that happens because they all
those
go
two
along
things
to get
kind
along.
of suck. But
And the Supreme Court, what happens if the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. You can't really intern 12 million people. And Trump ignores them. What then?
I don't know.
That's what he's talking about when it comes to worst case.
Okay. I can agree with that. That would be among the worst. We just because we don't know what the hell we would do then.
I mean, what happens,
Although,
he writes, if the Attorney General, the head of the FBI, the Secretary of Defense, and the Joint Chiefs and the General Staffs are all personally loyal to Trump, but Trump has both blanket criminal liability for himself and the power to pardon anybody else.
Yes.
That's bad.
It is. And, and that too is a very dangerous situation. And depending on who's where and in what position, you start trying to decimate the Department of Defense and people say no and they drag their feet. And the Supreme Court says you can't punish them, but he punishes them anyway. We do have something to point to in other countries who don't have this problem, haven't had it so far here. But what tends to happen there, if you're beating up on the military and nobody is stopping you, is that the military says, you know what, you're not the government anymore, and we're shooting you, and we're the government, and you now have a military junta in charge of your country. We thought it wouldn't happen here, but we thought a lot of things wouldn't happen here.
Exactly. So he writes, so here's the logic chain. The Supreme Court must understand it's put itself in this box. It must understand that if it ruled against Trump on a matter of sufficient importance, Trump would ignore it. And if the president exhibited such defiance, then the high court's position in American politics would be utterly irrevocably exposed. In other words, they're a bunch of frauds. Ergo, the Chief Justice would not under any circumstance allow the court to rule against Trump if he believed Trump might attempt to defy the ruling. And that, my friends, is the sum of all my fears.
That's a good one. That's a good point. Yeah, and we do have analogs to that in our history where...
Well, the Senate does it all the time.
Yeah. That's true.
Of course,
where they say
terrible, but if we don't put Gaetz there, what might be there would be worse, and therefore we should just go ahead and do it.
Right.
Because after all, he's the president and he gets to pick.
If we go along, if we knuckle under, at least we voted.
Comment up there because I hear that.
You've already just said it.
Riles me, but that's how they think. That's bullshit.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely true, and we've been through it a number of times in the past.
Oh, we can't get rid of the blue slips. You know what would happen?
No.
Something worse. Thank you, Dick Durbin.
There's
That's
definitely
why people didn't vote for Democrats, because you goddamn never do anything when you have the power.
What?
You should be Minnesota. You've got a one-person lead in your House or Senate. You do everything.
That's true. I mean, I thought our states were our laboratories of democracy. Well, we've had some successful experiments in some of these laboratories. Don't back off. And the very interesting thing, by the way, another phenomenon among Democrats, and it's true, so you got to say it, but it's not particularly helpful electorally speaking, I guess, unless people are just motivated to get rid of Trump no matter what. But if the Supreme Court were to rule against Trump in some way, and he were to ignore them and steamroller them and render the Supreme Court a nullity, and then somehow still agree to either stand for election or resign or whatever, and somehow be removed peaceably through an election and be replaced by a Democratic president, the Democratic president would immediately move to say, now we're gonna restore this system in which we listen to the Supreme Court because we're better than they are. Yeah. And for the good of the country, we won't arrest this guy, or we'll pardon him, or give him a state funeral or what have you. That's over with.
I propose that we compromise on this and we pardon Richard Nixon.
Yeah, right. And we swap places with them. Right? Pardon Nixon and put him and just prop him up in a chair and put Trump in his casket and bury him.
Right. So last makes two final points, which I think are worth mentioning.
Oh.
Okay.
You think? We'll see.
And one of them,
I tend to agree,
is that if you sketch out the Supreme Court decides not to get in Trump's way, scenario likely? No. Is it possible? 101 odds. But ask yourself,
I don't know, man.
What I just sketched out, does that seem any less possible than 1 million dead in an armed insurrection seemed like in 2016 at that election?
Yeah, well, we all have a comparison like that. Every time
Final point.
Oh, sorry, yes.
if we assume, just for the sake of argument, that that's what Trump has in mind,
yeah,
what would he be doing differently?
Nothing. I guess nothing right now. That's for sure.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, and what would he be doing differently? There will be some things that he does differently after January 20th, but for right now, this is all he can do. This is how he would do it.
Right. Appoint cronies to defense and justice, attack Senate Republicans and force a showdown over recess appointments that they'll back off on, dominance over Senate Republicans by daring them to vote against any nominees, fire Christopher Wray, putting Kash Patel in charge of the FBI, issue a emergency order abolishing birthright citizenship. I mean, this is what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all true. Over at the Supreme Court, I guess I'll add not only, of course, is he set to ignore them on everything, but he's choosing, in addition to a terrible Attorney General pick, a terrible Solicitor General pick. And not everybody knows. I mean, we talked about it the other day about who is the Solicitor General? What does he do? This is the person who represents the United States when the federal government is a party to a suit that lands in front of the Supreme Court and argues the official position of the United States. And Trump has made one of his defense lawyers his pick for Solicitor General. In fact, it's John Sauer, who was the guy who argued the presidential immunity case and told the Supreme Court, yes, the president could send SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his rival in the election, and if it was an official act, it would be immune. That's the guy who will be he'll be making the United States government's arguments to this pliant Supreme Court about what the law is and what the Constitution says. There isn't an emoluments clause. Yes, you can kill anybody. And the president is, and maybe there's no prohibition against him staying president for life. I don't know. What do you guys think? Well, you're making a pretty good suggestion here, Mr. Sauer. I guess we'll take it, because if we don't, we'll probably be killed. Okay. That's the ruling. That's now the Supreme Court says definitively what the law is. Oh, well, John Marshall made a big mistake on that one. So, yeah, it could be a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. Sorry. But they could all drop dead.
Well, could happen.
Right.
Anyway, so that's basically my summary for today.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing in my contract that says that my 20-minute segment has to go all the way to the hour.
Right.
But I will leave you with this. And this gets back to Blue Sky and its explosive growth. You have the original gangster Blue Sky people, the OGs.
Yeah.
Right? And they keep telling me these are called skeets.
I know.
And I say to them, listen, I was on Twitter when they tried to call it X.
Yeah.
These are posts, and I'm not calling them skeets, and if you don't like it, too bad for you.
You know what? I found out you can get away with it. If you want to call them posts, but if you spell it funny, Poast, they just think that's cute and allow you to do it.
Yeah.
So
how
if
about
you really hate
PISSED? These are posts.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I get the idea of skeet, like sky, tweet, skeet, but
doesn't do it for me. I don't like it. I'm not doing it. Too bad for you.
All right. Well, I don't know if I'm going to fight over it.
Well, you're not fitting into the culture here. Well, we just had
that's okay.
Doubled the growth, so the culture you used to have ain't there anymore.
That's true too. I know, and it makes people sad. But you know
what?
I'm
not calling them tweets. I'll give you that.
Okay. I mean, I accidentally do that. I habitually do that. If you and you do treat people nicely,
until you can embed them, and you can't.
Okay. Tweet was a good descriptive kind of term. Skeet is a weird joke, but they really like it. But honestly, the culture that I think has survived the influx, and I don't know whether it can forever, is if in the end you're nice to people, even though you won't call them skeets, they'll let you do it. They'll let you get away
absolutely.
with it.
If you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you, and if they're not, you block them. And that's basically how I managed life at Twitter and survived.
Yes.
And so I don't find that very different.
I cannot explain how. Many people can, but I have not decided to give any time to understanding it. But the block function of blue sky is much more powerful in a way, and I think can cumulatively signal to the system moderators that 100,000 people have blocked this person in an hour. Something's going on. It's subject to being gamed, as Twitter was, I guess. But apparently the big difference is that somewhere at some level, Blue Sky, while they're small, and this may now change, have been able to have a human touch on things every once in a while and say, this looks like, this mass blocking looks like garbage. This one looks like it's real and has a reason. But who knows? When they have 50 million users, will they be able to do that? I don't know. But anyway, that's the culture part of it that we hope to preserve, is that, why don't you just be decent to people and then let them read what they want to read instead of forcing an algorithm on them? That's the key difference. So instead we have starter packs forced on us, I guess. But they're good ones. So, all right, Greg, you can be excused from the table if you wish to be. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Dad.
Yes? This is practice for Thanksgiving a week ahead of time. It's a dry run. And, yes, you're here tomorrow. We didn't, for a while, know what week it was, but now we do.
Yeah.
And it's a week with a Thursday in it.
Say tomorrow. And then next week is Thanksgiving week, and we'll figure it out.
We'll just do that, too. And then play Alice's Restaurant and have the thing taken down for copyright.
Right. And I'm not going to be here next Thursday, but then again, it's Thanksgiving week. I don't know if anybody's going to be here next Thursday.
We don't know that. And then, and so, well, look, we'll play it by ear, and we'll see who's here and who's not.
And when we say we mean you.
Right. Yeah. A little Trumpy in that respect, but yes. Right. I have a mandate for this. Okay. Cool. Thank you for the start. And we got plenty to chase down now and to allow ourselves to be distracted.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Take care. Let's see. Things that are terrible that I put aside that I wanted to tell you about. Okay, let's see. I was reminded along the way, and some of the things that Greg was reading to us, a couple of things, some of which occurred to me, and then I said, I better save this for later, and now I've forgotten. Maybe we'll be reminded along the way. One of the things that came up, the deportation plans. I guess I'll say this about taking Trump seriously versus literally versus whatever. It's just difficult to know. And this is I guess you could say this is part of, say, Bannon's plans, is just keep everybody guessing, keep everybody baffled, keep them off balance. You can't even, with certainty say whether you believe something will happen the way it's predicted or not. And, but there's always some risk. You never really are able to make great predictions. But, most people are able to assert within some range of certainty from reading reports of what a person who's going to be in charge says they're going to do. You have some rational guess at what they're going to do. And here you just don't. So, for instance, it would be, you'd think, it's generally regarded as foolish and dangerous to say, Trump is just bluffing his way through this deportation thing. Plenty of his voters. The new hotness in journalism, where it used to be, Biden won the election, but we're going to go to diners where Trump voters hang out and ask them if they still support Trump. And guess what? They do. And then here's more Trump propaganda for you. I'm just telling you what people said, you see. I'm not propagandizing for Trump. I'm just going to print this. Now, the new hotness is, there's two, I guess. One, which is interesting, but dismaying, in that they are now publishing stories about the other dumb conspiracy theories that Trump supporters have moved on to believing now that they don't have to believe the stolen election conspiracy theory anymore. And they're terrible and dangerous and even worse than the election ones, because I don't know what they have to be even crazier in order to interest people and up the dopamine levels. I guess is dopamine the right? Anyway, it's certainly dopey, so that's probably dopamine at work. The other favorite genre to replace that is interviewing Trump supporters who are finding out that they've been targeted for termination. under the Trump administration and getting their reaction. And either there's equally broken down between panic and, oh my God, we haven't, that won't really happen to me. And then others just simply denying that it's ever going to happen. Oh, no. Plenty of naturalized citizens who are Latin American immigrants who say they don't mean me. Or, in fact, undocumented immigrants who didn't vote but supported Trump generally and have perhaps family members who also are naturalized and did vote for Trump and say, no, he only means that he's going to throw out the people with criminal records. In fact, I did see somewhere a Spanish language TikTok video that appears to be extraordinarily popular that claims in Spanish that no, Trump only is going to deport people who have committed crimes within the United States. And sometimes the Trump people do hint that, we'll begin that way. But then they neglect to tell everybody that the reason I refer to you as an illegal immigrant is because I believe your very presence in the country is the crime I'm talking about. You'll be thrown out because you have committed a crime in the United States. You came here. That's the crime. So then there's that. But they have come to convince themselves that only people who have committed some other kind of crime, murder, rape, theft, what have you, in the United States will be deported and they'll be okay. And it goes on, making things more and more ludicrous and ending with the claim that the Trump administration will actually be sending the families of hardworking, law-abiding immigrants $2,000 checks every month for 2 years to help them establish themselves successfully in the United States and work hard and do all the things that immigrants are supposed to do. They actually are now, I don't know whether they're believing it or not, but circulating a very popular TikTok video saying Trump is going to do, by the way, all the things that they insisted that Democrats were doing and that were terrible, like giving illegal immigrants money to come here and stay here and try to become citizens and vote. So if you're working and you stay out of jail, they'll leave you alone? I don't think so. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'm trying to find that Spanish language TikTok not tweet on Blue Sky, but it's not an easy thing for me to scroll back and find it in just a minute, but I've left the tab open here to see if I can't remind myself to go and find it. I think it was rather astonishing. And by the way, chiming in on the whether or not to call Blue Sky posts that weird name that we don't like to use, Darwin Darko, who is there and posting, 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 I would say, on Blue Sky, puts a finer point on it. Now, I have heard this before, vaguely, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody or just out and out cop to it. So I was kind of like, well, so I've had this vague idea that, didn't somebody say that there's something like, that there's I guess you would say maybe, Urban Dictionary level definition of that term that, we'll say it one more time, right? Skeet. That, is less than wholesome. And I had heard that, and I had heard what it was about, too. And I had heard, this gave me the feeling that, that probably is happening out there, and somebody thinks it's hilarious to see if they can convince everybody to say that, and then they'll point and laugh and enjoy the joke. I don't think it's harmful, but as Darwin puts it in medical terminology, recommended not using the term skeet. As the resident black correspondent, I have to inform you that I guess that would be black Twitter, black culture in general, and I'm not in that we have used that phrase for decades, so it predates, everything, as a euphemism for, we'll say, male ejaculate. My. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your breakfast. Guarantee Black Sky will not be calling it that. And this is the best point of the whole thing. Why representation matters, right? Like if you have enough, Blue Sky users in your circle speaking up and saying, here's reasons why you don't want to do that. And I mean, it's filtered through before, although I can't promise you that it came from a black user. It could just be somebody who was listening to black users saying, don't call it that, please. Plenty of reasons not to want to use it. That's another good one. And, we got to be finding something else. Although, there's probably also a couple of users who, like I said, know exactly what it means and just thinks that's funny. And, I guess, in a way, it kind of is. All right. So, anyway, we were talking about how to approach thinking about, feeling about, talking about some of these things that Trump threatens and trying to determine where to land in between. All right, on the one hand, Trump has said outright, I mean, there's no denying that he keeps insisting and that others insist for him. Yes, we're serious. Yes, we're going to try and deport 11, 20, 22, whatever it is, million people. So you want to be on the lookout for that. Then, of course, there's the level on which you can say, well, it's such an enormous undertaking. They're so incompetent. They'll never be able to get it done. You have no idea the scale you're talking about. Okay, so supposing they missed the mark by far on the scale, does that make it any better? Like if you're one of the 1 million people that gets rounded up and put in a deportation camp and maybe you get fed, maybe you don't. Like, while you're in there eating your shoes, are you like, well, at least he missed the mark by 19 million. I knew he wouldn't be able to do this to 20 million of us. I'm sure that's of no interest to you. But there will definitely be people who point to it and say, see, it's not as bad as you think. And like there will be MAGA people who point at it and say, see, it's not as bad as you think. And it hasn't even disrupted the economy in the way that you thought. We killed 1 million people last time with COVID and it still didn't ruin the economy. Well, that's thanks to Joe Biden in terms of, although there's still people out there, still even liberal-leaning, left-leaning people out there who say, well, Joe Biden killed the majority of that 1 million. Well, not really. I mean, it had the lingering after effects of a disastrous abandonment of public health under the Trump administration. Yes, there was abandonment in another way of public health for the most infection sensitive among us under the Biden administration, just in terms of like, please get this thing off my plate. There are so many people out there who still are screaming about masks, and the vast majority of us have been vaccinated now. Okay, fine. Was it the right decision? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. But people were still mad about it. But anyway, so look, we don't know what they're going to do with the deportation thing, and they are awfully incompetent. And I guess one of the bigger, scarier things is that the roundup part, I don't know that it's nothing easy about getting to 20 million, but is it easy to strike fear into 20 million people who think they'll be deported? Yes, by rounding up and deporting far fewer. But then the question is, where are they putting them? I mean, there's the logistical question. Do you have a place to put them? Yes, no. And there we have at least, for instance, the story that made it to my eyes today from the Texas Tribune, which says that the state of Texas has offered, Texas offers Starr County Ranch to Trump for mass deportation plans. Like, don't comply with this. But down in Texas, there are people who want to. The Texas Land Commissioner, Dawn Buckingham, said the state's recently purchased 1,400-acre ranch could be used as a deportation hub. Well, there again. So at the logistical level, does 1,400 acres even start to make a dent in the kind of acreage you would need to house 20 million people for deportation? And there's so many questions wrapped up in that I don't even know how to start answering them. Certainly 1,400 acres alone isn't going to do it. I have a difficult time envisioning just how big is 1,400 acres. a ranch in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure. Like ordinarily I'd say, no, you can't just overnight turn that into a deportation camp. But you can if you're going to ignore things like, do we care whether there's running water or electricity there? Do we care whether there are roads and adequate infrastructure for moving people in, processing them, and moving them out again? And then ultimately, do we know whether this thing is remote enough such that if they just ignored all of that and people just died in those camps? Sorry, but what if they did, right? What if all of them did? What if that was the point? Would news of this reach you? I mean, we do have, again, historical precedent, right? Germans living in direct proximity to death camps that burned the corpses of hundreds of thousands and ultimately millions, and who just thought, hey, we had this weird gray snow that fell on our land. We just don't know what to do about that. That's all. I didn't know what happened to the trains moved by. Gray snow fell on us. We thought it was weird. It was the ashes of the dead that they're burning. Can you deport 20 million people? What about the infrastructure? How will they do it? Will it be buses, planes, trains? What about smokestacks? You can deport people that way as ash. I mean, are they Nazis or are they not? Have we said they're Nazis? And we say it's not hyperbole. You have to believe us when we tell you they're Nazis. And then, of course, they march through downtowns in, carrying swastika flags. And the newspapers report people dressed as Nazis marched through downtown today. As I saw somebody say on Blue Sky. Listen, people who are dressed as Nazis who march through downtowns carrying swastika flags are Nazis. They're not dressed as Nazis. What is the term, the phrasing? It's not a street production of The Sound of Music. They're Nazis. Say so, or else we're never going to get out from under this. Well, we may never get out from under this. But if you believe they're Nazis, one of the things that you probably have to have, at least in the back of your mind, is that the camps, to the extent that they're able to build them, no, the logistics are not within their capabilities. No, they're not going to be able to ship people in, process them, and ship them out to other countries. Certainly not healthily, safely, and in one piece. But that's what Nazis told the Germans they were going to do. And then when they found that they couldn't handle the logistics of it and didn't want to handle logistics of it anyway, granted, they had a two-front war on their hands as well, and that'll make logistics difficult as well, and that may or may not be the situation here in the United States while we're deporting people or attempting to. But, if you don't care if they die and you think that the news is never going to reach the American people that they are dying, and there's a pretty good chance that 50% of the population will say, good, I'm glad they're dying, because they're awful people, then you're going to want to watch out for the gray snow option. Sorry, that's out there. 1,400 acres. Will that make a dent? I don't know. But here we are seeing some pre-compliance here. Alejandro Serrano writes this for the Texas Tribune, and we'll give you a flavor for it at least. The Texas General Land Office is offering President-elect Donald Trump, not even president yet, a 1,400-acre Starr County ranch as a site to build detention centers for his promised mass deportations of undocumented immigrants, and maybe some documented ones too, according to a letter the office sent him on Tuesday. Again, all of this is, I don't know if that counts as official communications or whatever. It's purporting to have sent him this letter. He's a very disorganized guy. Maybe he put it in a box in the bathroom and he never read the thing. Couldn't tell you. Starr County is right along the border of Mexico. So, it makes a certain amount of sense that you would locate such a thing there. So it's not ludicrous like Kansas offers him a deportation camp. Although you're going to need, camps everywhere if you're going to try and do this kind of garbage. But anyway, Land Commissioner Dawn Buckingham said in the Tuesday letter that her office is, quote, fully prepared to enter an agreement with any federal agencies involved in deporting individuals from the country, quote, to allow a facility to be built for the processing, detention, and coordination of the largest deportation of violent criminals in the nation's history. So she's a cheerleader for it. She wants it to happen. But again, we're far from seeing it happen. We have land. We'll give it to you. You build the thing. I don't know. Will they build the thing? Will they not build the thing? Who knows? Why do they have this land? The state recently bought the land along the U.S.-Mexico border in the Rio Grande Valley and announced plans to build a border wall on it. The previous owner had not let the state construct a wall there and had actively, quote, actively blocked law enforcement from accessing the property, unquote, according to the letter the GLO sent Trump. So, all right. I mean, for one thing, there are and were acts of resistance that you can do. They can be overcome, I guess. But, last year for the entirety of the administration, whoever the private landowner was like, no, you can't build a wall on the border. Not here, because I own this land, and GTFO, and he told law enforcement to GTFO too. But yet they didn't resort to eminent domain or seizure of the property. Is that something that could happen in this administration with immunity, with a compliant Supreme Court, with whatever? Yeah, sure, I guess so, except that you won't have to because the state of Texas is complying on its own. I don't know what deal they worked to get a hold of this land, but eventually they got it. And they had thought, okay, well, we'll build or allow to be built part of the border wall here. But, you might as well build a concentration camp while you're at it. A Trump campaign spokesperson did not immediately respond Tuesday to a request for comment. A cornerstone of Trump's campaign was his pledge to clamp down on immigration by returning policies from his first term and deporting undocumented people en masse on a scale the country has not experienced in decades. Former aides, including some who are set to rejoin him, have described incorporating staging areas near the border to detain and deport people. If you ask them to imagine how it would go, well, I guess we'd have big camps. All right, well, do you have any camps? No. But we can totally rapidly build the camps because definitely we have lots of billionaires who say they can make things happen and make things happen quickly. Can they? I don't know. And that's what's at the heart of all of this. You take it seriously, you got to worry about it. But at the same time, these people are clowns and idiots, and they have very little idea of what it would take logistically to get this stuff done. But we don't know whether to imagine the logistics of legitimately doing this, i.e. rounding up 20 million people, holding them alive in the hopes of being able to deport them alive and healthy to somewhere. Because, hey, we don't want to, we don't need any more harm to come from them but that they get out of the country. But that is exactly what the Nazis, remember, we're accusing them of being Nazis, told everybody they were going to do. Well, we're going to move them and we're going to put them to work and we're not going to starve them and then burn their bodies. We're just not. But then they just do. And I guess, Scott sends me a note about self-deportation, and certainly they hope that will be the case. And that threatening all of this will make people think, oh my God, the Nazis are coming for me. I should run away and escape. It's making people who are American citizens think, well, Nazis, they come for all sorts of people. Eventually they'll come for me too. Maybe I need to make sure my papers are in order or start thinking about escaping to moving to, another country. If I do it in the next 2 months, orderly move. If I wait until later, escape. What will my plans be? But you gotta think about this. So they could be doing it right. They could be doing it wrong. And we don't know. So that's what makes it so difficult to predict. No, I don't think they're capable of the logistics of moving people to camps, keeping them healthy, feeding them, and just moving them to other countries for a lot of reasons. Not just the logistics internally, but as Greg mentioned, what countries? What countries are going to say yes to this? What does it take for a country to say no? To what extent will Trump threaten them if they say no? Will they be able to stand up to him? Well, internationally, they just might. But Also, they're bribable, or he's bribable, or whatever. Maybe it's just, I'm going to send them to your country, unless, of course, you send me, is there something you have in your central banking system that if it was in my pockets, does it mean if Mexico pays me personally $1 billion, I won't send them to Mexico? I don't know how they're going to be able to avoid sending them to Mexico, but whatever, pick your scenario. But if you scare people into believing, well, we might not even be competent enough to keep you alive in one of these camps, right? Well, then maybe they will self-deport, as Mitt Romney put it when he thought he was going to be doing it in a polite fashion. Maybe he didn't have this in mind. But, so it's difficult to predict how it will go if we think that people like Stephen Miller,
bald asshole,
exactly, will not care very much about whether those people die, thinking Americans won't discover it, or if they do, won't believe it, or if they do, don't care. I don't know. Which scenario are we planning for? Do we think they're going to be able to handle this all competently? No. Do we think they'll try anyway? Maybe. All right, back to this article just so we know what's going on here. Buckingham had previously said that she approved an easement within 24 hours of acquiring the Starr County land to let the Texas Facilities Commission, which is overseeing the state's border wall construction, to begin building a wall. In the Fox interview, she said that the move was followed by brainstorming with her team. We figured, hey, the Trump administration probably needs some deportation facilities because we've got lots of these violent criminals that we need to round up and get the heck out of our country, Buckingham said. She noted the land is mostly flat, easy to build on, accessible to international airports, and near the Rio Grande. Now, again, she's planning for something that's like orderly movement of people, which I don't know if that's what's happening. And by the way, if that's not what's happening, and it's clear that people are being murdered wholesale inside of a camp like this, if one wall of the camp is the border wall, right, and it's right on the border, and everything that the Trump administration and others say about illegal immigration over the Mexican border, that it's controlled by criminal cartels, is true, like, why do we think that works? Like, okay, if the deportation camp is literally right on the border, separated by Mexico from a wall, how much of the other side, by the way, of the wall do we patrol? I'm just sort of wondering, like, doesn't the couple of, criminal cartel RPGs fired into the wall to spring people from the camp where they're otherwise facing murder and cremation, does that not instead liberate the camp and load up the criminal cartel army to strike back with willing participants? Oh, we're not thinking that far ahead. Or no, or don't take us literally, or whatever. I don't know. I guess they're just not thinking about that. We're happy to make this offer instead, Buckingham says, and hope they take us up on it. Trump's vow to carry out mass deportation is certain to encounter logistical and legal challenges like the ones that stifled promises from his first campaign once he assumed office. However, Trump cabinet picks indicate he is moving ahead and trying to carry out the deportations. He selected Stephen Miller,
bald asshole,
an architect of the previous Trump administration's border and immigration policy, to return as a top aide, and has named Tom Homan, a former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to be his border czar. And Texas is poised to help him implement these policies. After Trump left office in 2021, Governor Greg Abbott launched an unprecedented border enforcement operation that included a military base in Eagle Pass and the deployment of thousands of Department of Public Safety troopers and state National Guard troops to the border. You remember all of that. CNN reported Saturday that Texas's border czar, Michael Banks, who served as a special advisor to Abbott, has been part of the behind-the-scenes discussions with Trump's team about immigration initiatives. So there you go. We do have some advanced compliance from Texas. and they may or may not know what they're getting into with all that. By the way, the sound piece, like I said, that I grabbed specifically for mentions of Stephen Miller,
bald asshole,
comes from Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's Larry David's voice. You probably recognize it. From one of what I thought was one of their best episodes. I found Curb Your Enthusiasm very difficult to watch. It's very cringy in some places. But one of the best episodes I saw was I guess it was a Halloween-themed episode where Larry David, you can see him doing this, right? Answering the doorbell for trick-or-treaters, encounters teenagers who he thinks are A, too old to be out trick-or-treating, and there's no such thing. And B, were wearing no costumes, and therefore he thought, we're not entitled to candy, but as a curmudgeonly person, he thought, oh, no, I don't have to give you candy. Now, my policy, as I read it here on Blue Sky, people were justifying it. Listen, kids are kids. And also, you have free candy to give out. Give out the free candy. You're not going to run out. But he refused, and they were terrible kids, and that was the character. They were abusive to him, and he refused them candy, and then they toilet papered his property, but as he turns around and finds out later, they have spray painted
bald asshole on
his front door. And then he's trying to describe to the cops that he calls to report this, that this is a hate crime. This is a hate crime against bald people. And it's a very funny scene. You should take a look at it. But anyway, it gave us the chance to grab a soundbite of someone else saying
bald asshole,
which we can use when we talk about, well, probably 3 or 4 different people in the upcoming administration. All right. A couple of other things to add to the list. But generally speaking, I just wanted to, put out there that it's going to be difficult to know how to regard Trump's plans. I don't want to put people to, at ease and let them drift off to sleep by telling them, he's not going to be able to accomplish the things he wants to accomplish with deportation. But it is entirely possible. But it may mean, how do I tell you how to react to this? It may mean anything from, he said he was going to get 20 million people and he got 500,000, and it's terrible what he did with those people, but some of them got deported and some of them are living maybe in deplorable conditions, but maybe not quite as bad as what I've described as being possible. And ultimately everybody just says, he really copped out on that one. His supporters just say, I don't know, somehow it's Biden's fault. Hunter Biden kept freeing people from prison or something. I don't know. Or whatever. Or just claim, no, the 20 million are gone. We won. It could be that. It could be anything from that to Holocaust-level extermination, to which they say that we didn't kill those guys. We sent them to Guatemala, and what do you know about it? Could be anywhere in there. It's just, it could be anything from horror show to total incompetence to just total lie. And I can't comfort you and say it definitely is a lie. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I guess the other thing, like we said, there's lots of, I should add this, maybe in a minute or two before our next break. Let me add John Storr's latest from the editorial board. He cautions you this way. The now they're going to find out argument is flawed. Something to keep in mind. Why, he asks, are we expecting so much from Trump voters? What does he mean? Well, there's an argument, he says, I want to discuss. It goes something like this. Donald Trump's policies are going to alienate some of the people who voted for him, right? We're going to interview them and find out that they're scared or they don't believe it's really going to happen. But to be sure, many of them wanted something done about the economy. Prices were too damn high, but they didn't sign up for tariffs or deportations or cuts to social services like food stamps. As a liberal pundit put it, Trump seems poised to follow through with that policy agenda, though going through with it is, quote, political suicide. But my question is why? Why are we expecting so much from Trump voters? I'm not making a distinction, by the way, here, between his base and those who chose to go along for the ride. I mean all of his supporters, John says. And I'm asking, why should we place our democratic faith and future of the republic in their hands? Well, ideally we don't, but I get you. It's not like that Trump had an agenda to bring down the cost of living. All he said was, make America great again. Deport illegals. suppress transgender rights, beat down weak and marginalized folks. Voila! His one economic plan was tariffs. A tax imported or on imported goods from China and elsewhere will raise prices on everything, not just imports, as retailers will price gouge under the cover of inflation. We just saw them do that, right, with COVID. Even when they didn't need to raise their prices because of supply chain disruptions, they found, we can claim that, people will believe it, let's do it. Tariffs are the opposite of what you do to reduce costs, and that's why he lied. Trump said nations would pay the tax, not companies bringing goods in. And we know that's upside down and backwards. His voters chose to believe them. So let me get this straight. People who can't or won't understand tariffs are going to deduce all by themselves that tariffs are the reason that they're now paying 3 and 4 times more for their sneakers, t-shirts, and video game consoles. People who voted against their own economic interests are going to figure out on their own what exactly those interests are. But not only that, but only after they found that they've been screwed over by the president they voted for. Well, to paraphrase Mark Twain, it would be easier to continue scamming these people than to convince them that they've been scammed. And the scamming will continue. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We'll jump back in to what John Storr was saying over at the editorial board, just to kind of set the frame here. He makes a good point here, and I guess long story short it this way. The hope, I guess, or I don't know whether it's hope, fear, something in between, cope mechanism as well, copium. But everybody seems sort of hung up on the idea that there's going to be this big FAFO reckoning that, and it's reinforced by seeing all of the new favorite genre of articles interviewing Trump supporters who are on the target list, who say either that it won't happen, or it's all an exaggeration, or even up to and including, I have seen a couple of these. Yeah, I love the guy and he may deport me, and I'll love him even if he deports me. I've actually seen that. And I don't know. I mean, there's enough people in the world that there's got to be at least one who's willing to say that, and whether or not he makes his way to the newspapers with it, I don't know. Or it could just it's just as easy for it to be a plant, quite honestly, but we don't need to go there to figure it out. But that's the latest phenomenon, is we now are asking Trump supporters who found out that they are either going to, I may be deported, I won't be able to get the medication that I want, I'm afraid that they're going to eliminate the vaccine that keeps us healthy, I just found out what a tariff is, whatever it is, and but that there's going to be this big FAFO moment. And John's argument here is, these are people who willingly and deliberately misunderstood everything, or have been fed a steady diet of misinformation and insist on continuing to consume it the idea that they're going to find out is maybe a little bit stupid, maybe a little naive on our part, right? FAFO. Finding out means getting real information about what just happened. And I don't know that they're going to do that. Now, they may find themselves deported, and you will think, well, there, you just found out, right? You're deported. Well, if you are deported and you get off the bus, let's say, that dumps you somewhere in Mexico, and the whole time you've been told Hunter Biden did this to you. I mean, it's ludicrous, but you may, I assume, get off that bus saying, God damn, Hunter Biden, I can't believe it. It's ridiculous. I thought we defeated that guy. Anything could happen. And the idea that people who are dumb enough to F around will find out. I mean, I guess we should remember this. FAFO, to the extent that it actually means anything, I think the origin here is we're talking about tough guys jawboning with each other. F around with me and you'll find out what's going to happen to you. I mean, outside of the context of I just directly punched you in the teeth and they all fell out. You effed around, you found out. That's something. That's difficult to deny, and difficult to deny the cause of why are my teeth on the ground? I saw you take a swing with your fist at my face, felt the impact, saw the blood, all my teeth fell out on the floor. Hunter Biden did this. It's difficult to deny the real causation. But does it apply to generalized political outcomes that people can be lied to about and have shown a tremendous willingness to believe? I think John's point here is maybe not. The right-wing media apparatus, he continues, which is global in scale, prevented these voters from knowing what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had done for the economy, inflation, wages, and GDP, but especially for the material interests of the white working class. A lot of this stuff is in the abstract, right? Again, as Greg's told us, I can't find work, but the GDP is up. I don't care. I also don't know what the GDP is. Biden and Harris literally ditched 40 years of supply-side consensus in favor of growing the economy, as Biden liked to say, from the bottom up and the middle out. I mean, this was a tremendous thing. But it's an abstraction and people don't care. Even people who say they do care. I'm a socialist. They should be doing this the whole time. All right, they're doing it. Oh, effing genocide, Joe. Well, that's a different problem. But it's preventing you from, you came into this as a socialist. That's an economic ideology. It wasn't, he didn't implement socialism, but I mean, this is a big thing. Abandoning the 40-year supply-side consensus. Well, I found something else to be mad at him about. Anyway, but no one who watches Fox or listens to Joe Rogan or reads the Daily Wire or sees YouTube ads for gold bullion knows any of that. Is that pronounced correctly? I don't know. It's not like the soup, right? I mean, it isn't. But is the pronunciation the same? All right. Well, too bad. I don't know. I don't get enough ads for it to know. But this is the same right-wing media apparatus, which has only grown larger since 2020, is going to prevent Trump voters from knowing who's responsible for price hikes, job losses, and soaring interest rates that will be directly attributable to deportations, tariffs, and other insane policies. If there's someone to blame, it won't be Donald Trump. It'll be rhinos or Marxist, communist, fascist, socialists or immigrants. And by the way, don't sleep on the possibility that they'll simply lie about the statistics. Oh, soaring inflation. It's not soaring. It isn't. No, job losses. Job losses. There's job gains. What? The guy with the official presidential seal says so, and the Washington Post and others say the guy with the seal says so. We got to report this. If Trump voters are not especially attuned to the right-wing media apparatus, they will nevertheless feel its ambiance as the Washington press corps habitually launders Trump's talking points and, as we have seen, appeases him by either self-censoring or acting as if already under threat of investigation or prosecution by his administration. If Trump voters are able to see through the fog of the right-wing media apparatus and the Washington press corps, they still might not understand the damage done by Trump's economic policies, as his administration will almost certainly try to corrupt government data. The jobs report, inflation index, consumer spending, there will be huge incentives to fudge those after Trump commits that political suicide. It's only political suicide if you find out, right? If Trump voters are able somehow to connect all the dots and blame him for everything he did or didn't do, as they blamed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for everything they did and didn't do, so what? Is Trump going to respond to the backlash as if he were a normal president? He doesn't care about his party. He doesn't care about the next election, presuming, it says here, presuming he doesn't run again, or I guess assuming there even is an election, I guess. It's hard to see any incentive outside his self-interest that would move him to back off anything. And if I haven't mentioned the fact that these voters, even the ones who chose to go along for the ride, inhabit a world of fantastical fiction, absolute trash reality that none of us should put our hopes in. These people believe mothers, quote, abort babies after they're born. Or if they don't believe it, they don't mind people who say so. They believe a student goes to school as a girl and comes back as a boy. Or if they don't believe it, they don't mind people who say so. Even if we give them the maximum benefit of the doubt and treat them more like children than adults, are we going to trust them to realize Trump is bad for them? And even if Trump voters turn against Trump, thus creating an opportunity for the Democrats to win them over, are they going to recognize what the Democrats are offering in terms of economic policy, given the hold the right-wing media apparatus has on them, and given their past record of voting against their own economic interests? I'll pass, John says. I'll pass on believing these people are going to find out anything after having effed around, and I'll still censor that one, I guess, just for the hell of it. They don't take democracy seriously. They don't take their own lives seriously, much less the fate of a free republic. I'll put my faith in good people who seek out good trouble in the name of liberty, equality, and justice for all. They're a minority these days, but that's okay. The world never changed for the better because a majority wanted it to. It changed because a righteous minority demanded it. Well, maybe. But I definitely think he's got an overall good point. FAFO entirely depends on the ability and willingness, I guess to some extent, of people to FO. Not F off, but find out. I don't want to find out. Or even if I do find out, I don't understand what I just found. That's entirely possible. These are some extraordinarily dumb people. You definitely don't want to be betting on them finding out. Right? I guess that's a good point. A little bit depressing, but isn't everything these days? By the way, some of the other things that I have seen mentioned in passing, but I don't know if I have any articles to read to you about. But I did see people pointing out, among the many things that we think sectors that could collapse, right, if there really were mass deportations. Of course, everybody has brought up the supply chain, certainly the food supply chain in this country, agriculture almost entirely dependent on foreign workers, but all sorts of agriculture, not just necessarily field produce agriculture, but, the meat industry, meat packing and processing, very much dependent on immigrant labor, but everything is. Construction, for the wealthy who are very far removed from all of this, yes, your lawn care crew, your construction crew, roofing crew, very much domestic cleaners. Everybody's dependent on immigrant labor of all sorts. But I don't know. If you think you're somehow immune from all of that, I'm just going to eat Twinkies. The end. Nothing else. I just will remind you how much of our modern economy and the Amazon culture. Jeff Bezos. You want to find something out? How much immigrant labor are in the fulfillment centers and packing places for Amazon and others who do all their business online? When people start to realize, why aren't my things arriving here? And I guess they won't see it for the Christmas rush because it'll still be the Biden administration. But next Christmas, I guess, real possibility, or, a long time before then, you'll find out, how come these things aren't being delivered? Whatever happened to my Amazon Prime promising me it was going to get here on time? And maybe then you'll start to see people inside Amazon saying, no, we really do need to start working with delivery by drone because all of our people are gone. But it's not just delivery, and it's not necessarily delivery that's so immigrant dependent. It's the picking and packing at the warehouses and the movement of the goods behind the scenes. And you'll start to see that things start falling apart. My order isn't coming in a single day. It's not even coming in a single week. What happened to all that? Why did Biden ruin Amazon? They'll be telling one another, or asking one another. Just another sector to keep an eye out for. All right, let's see. Gosh, there's so many things and so many things that we won't be able to cram in here. But yet, okay, I had mentioned to you, I guess next in line along with the FAFO possibility not coming through for us, right? They're just never going to find out. Why not? What sorts of people are we talking about? I mentioned that even when they no longer will have Joe Biden, Hunter Biden to blame, that might not be enough for them. I'm going to blame them for the next 2 years. Remember that there are people who blame Obama for 9/11, right? I mean, look, people are crazy out there. How crazy are they? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Guardian knows how crazy they are. Jason Wilson, in particular, knows. He writes this piece on far-right militia targeting the U.S. military now. That'll work out great. Over baseless hurricane weather weapon claims. What is going on here? Let's just get to it. I won't try to explain it before we get there. Veterans on Patrol. Remember them? You will, as we begin to read. Veterans on Patrol believes the government caused Hurricane Helene with weather manipulation tech. Telegram chats reveal. Okay. What the F are you talking about? A vigilante militia notorious for its patrols on America's border with Mexico, where nobody cares if they kill people because they're just immigrants anyway. Now they're doing their stupid, illegal vigilante patrols right in the heart of America, in western North Carolina, where chaos reigns because of the Hurricane Helene weather event. A vigilante militia notorious for its patrols on the border with Mexico has threatened to take on the U.S. military in recent weeks. Do we take them seriously like Trump? Not seriously, literally, not literally, I don't know. Is it just aspirational? Should you worry about it? I don't know what to tell you. But they say they want to take on the U.S. military, with its founder baselessly claiming that Hurricane Helene was deliberately caused by a government energy weapon, that needs to be destroyed, according to private and public Telegram chats. I think we have a sound effect for that one. Veterans on Patrol, that's VOP. VOP's conversations reveal that members believe the outlandish conspiracy theory that the U.S. government caused the hurricane with weather manipulation technology, and that the U.S. military is spraying the American people with poisons, and that members should be willing to destroy government facilities in order to stop these activities. Wouldn't you if you knew the truth? Well, what if what you thought was the truth wasn't the truth, and you went to destroy a military facility and they effing killed you? But then again, I thought that they would effing kill you if you tried to storm the Capitol in the middle of the counting of the Electoral College votes. And that turned out not to be true. The chats provided to the Guardian newspaper, which is where we're reading from. You remember, I told you it was the Guardian, didn't I? The chats provided to the Guardian by the Global Project on Hate and Extremism. You got to have a global one now because it's all interrelated. Which they're using the acronym, well, not acronym, but the abbreviation, I guess, since it doesn't spell a word that I can say. GPAHE, Global Project on Hate and Extremism. Well, these chats raise the prospect of the conspiracy-fueled militia group engaging in renewed violence under the incoming Trump administration. This is where it's really getting crazy. Well, they'll stop once Trump is in, right? Because they trust Trump. Well, I don't know whether Trump has any control over them either, or whether they're just crazy and just want to overthrow the government no matter who's running it. GPAHE co-founder Heidi Beirich, I'm guessing at the pronunciation. I hope we got it. B-E-I-R-I-C-H. Beirich or Beirich, I don't know. But Heidi Beirich told The Guardian VOP is one of the most dangerous militia groups out there now, with their recent targeting of military efforts to help with the hurricane relief efforts in North Carolina and their insane conspiracy theories. This is a recipe for disaster. And I think what she means here is they're targeting military efforts to help. But VOP also is in towns claiming that they're there to help. So it's a little bit confusing. But yeah, they're going to target the military for helping. Look for the helpers, as Mr. Rogers used to say, but also, as the militia guys now say, look for the helpers and kill them because they're reasons. Because reasons. The Guardian requested comment from VOP via an email to an address posted in their Telegram chats. Guess what? They probably didn't get one. I don't know. In early October, the main account on VOP's public Telegram, probably run by the group's founder, Michael Meyer, who goes somehow by the pseudonym of Lewis Arthur as well, has been depicting Helene as an, quote, act of war perpetuated by the United States military, unquote, with the goal of ensuring that, quote, the lithium mines are secured and the planned Asheville smart city comes to fruition, unquote. I don't know if we know anything about the Asheville smart city nonsense. Maybe it's not. I got no idea. I don't think I've heard that one before. But the lithium mines, which may or may not exist, we've heard that one before. That was a hot topic in conspiracy land a couple weeks ago. The false claim that the federal government was seizing land from property owners in North Carolina in order to establish lithium mines circulated widely among the far right in the wake of Helene. And I guess no point in telling them. Trump said he was going to build a wall. He said he was going to seize land from landowners and build the wall. 4 years later, he didn't seize anything from anybody. They're not doing this. That's not going to convince crazy people. The idea that smart cities are being created as a means of social control has a longer history among right-wing conspiracy theorists and has even been linked to previous natural disasters. In 2023, following wildfires in Hawaii, Canada, and the Canary Islands, conspiracy theorists on social media went viral after linking the disasters to an international conference on smart cities. Those claims were further amplified by the likes of the far-right broadcaster Alex Jones and Trump ally Charlie Kirk. I don't think I even knew that Charlie Kirk was mixed up in this stuff. No surprise, of course, that Alex Jones would pick up on it. But I thought Charlie Kirk existed in a different world, but I guess he does. Just a different one than I thought. In the aftermath of Helene's catastrophic impact on North Carolina, the Federal Disaster Management Agency, or FEMA, it's Federal Emergency Management Agency, but okay, had to alter its work patterns due to fears over militia threats. One man was eventually arrested and faces charges of going armed to the terror of the public. That's one of my favorite charges. On October 30th, in VOP's main Telegram channel, the account holder posted a poll that read, quote, the U.S. military destroyed multiple communities and murdered hundreds by steering weather weapon Helene into Appalachia country. What should we do? That's some poll. The answers offered were, quote, target military equipment and destroy the directed energy weapons easily accessible by the public. What? Who? Where? Another choice, destroy power and water lines that feed military bases and won't at all affect your ability to get power and water restored in western North Carolina. Another choice, locate all top brass bold enough to walk in public and detain them for murder. And I'm not sure whether they mean let's detain them for the murder of the people of North Carolina or let's detain them for us to murder later on. You tell me. Or all three above. Some 72% of 49 respondents, and okay, that's not a lot of people, but thank God, but too many. One is too many. Some 72% of the 49 respondents to the poll in the chat opted for all three, of course. Why not? Yeah, I want all three. And we eat them. Later the same day, the main account wrote, VOP News is openly requesting the public to provide the locations of all USMIC equipment used to control the weather. It's over here at Mar-a-Lago. Sure. It added, we intend to destroy this equipment in order to save lives. The account claimed, we will not use violence against the puppet soldiers or murder the innocent like they do. But there are more than a few of us who are crazy enough, that's what they say, to tear these weapons down just as we did the cartel water stations across the Arizona desert. This is a reference to a 2020 incident in which the group destroyed several migrant desert watering stations in Arizona's Pima County, claiming that they were used by cartel scouts. In response, Pima County Sheriff's Office has had an open warrant for Myers' arrest over the alleged vandalism. Although national media attention has moved on from the hurricane, VOP appears to have adopted the belief that it was a military attack on domestic targets into their belief systems and may thus have intensified their anti-government posture, with Donald Trump and Republicans being portrayed as complicit in the events. So if you thought that was going to end it, no. The day after Trump was reelected, the main account posted that, quote, the U.S. military is currently poisoning the skies of western North Carolina after it has already destroyed this area with weather weapon Helene. The account claimed that, quote, American children are dying from fentanyl pouring across the border, bioweapons jabbed in their arms, vaccines, and the poisons being absorbed that come straight from the U.S. military, unquote, with the referenced, quote, bioweapon being the COVID-19 vaccine. The account has repeatedly pointed to Trump's role in producing the COVID-19 vaccine as a reason that he cannot be trusted. Well, that, I guess, comes around. Members of the group have now melded their claims about the hurricane and plans to strike equipment that they believe to be used for controlling the weather with long-held beliefs that, quote, directed energy weapons, unquote, and, quote, stratospheric aerosol injections, unquote, or chemtrails, are being wielded by the government against the American people. On Sunday, in a post headed, all caps, military treason alert, the main account posted that the U.S. Air Force was, quote, spraying poisons and, quote, bombarding western North Carolina, adding that, quote, until these weather weapons are eliminated, freedom and liberty are illusions. Byrick, the GPAHE founder, said, quote, given the group's general distrust of Trump and government agencies, we may well see more threats and possible targeted violence against government assets in the near future, particularly if Trump's plans to use the military in his deportation plans aren't up to snuff for VOP, right? They could actually say he's dragging his feet and now we're going to attack the military for that reason. Or, of course, there's always the option of one of these idiots actually pulls an attack on a military installation somewhere, and Trump can't possibly believe or process the idea that anyone would oppose him that he didn't already have on a targeting list. Certainly couldn't believe that a right-wing pro-deportation militia would oppose him. I don't think he'll be able to process that. It'll be much easier for him to process. Antifa did it. Liberals did it. George Soros did it. And we're going to have to use the military to strike back against these saboteurs. But instead of striking back against the VOP people who pulled the attack, he, I don't know what, rounds up liberal activists and said they planned it on social media or something. Who knows? Who knows? VOP was formed in Pima County, Arizona around 2015 as a self-described veterans advocacy group. You know, people leave you alone if you're like veterans for something. Oh yeah, veterans. We support our veterans. Veterans for exterminating all of our neighbors. Well, they are veterans. Founded in 2015 as a self-described veterans advocacy group, though founder Meyer has acknowledged he is not a veteran. So what the hell does anything mean? Right? Stolen valor to murder you. This seems dangerous. While the group initially assisted homeless veterans in the Tucson area, which is a good thing, setting up temporary shelters and distributing supplies to those in need, from 2018 it refocused on vigilante patrols at the southern border, with Meyer spinning conspiracy narratives fueled by his apocalyptic Christian nationalist beliefs. Oh no, not those. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, VOP's activities are founded on anti-government and anti-immigrant ideas, and the group has published anti-indigenous, anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, and anti-Mormon falsehoods under Meyer, who is a self-proclaimed pastor. What a great church. From 2018, Meyer drew attention on social media and recruits to the organization by claiming Mexican cartels were orchestrating human trafficking operations at the southern border, a narrative that meshed with QAnon and Pizzagate conspiracy theories, which were then gaining currency on the far right, and Donald Trump believed and campaigned on in 2020 and on into 2024 as well. Don't forget that. The organization conducted unofficial desert patrols, and Meyer claimed to be in a chess match with the cartels. They have frequently falsely claimed to have found evidence of such trafficking. In one case in 2018, they claimed to have found a human trafficking site, which authorities determined was simply an abandoned homeless encampment. Their activities drew criticism from law enforcement agencies who stated that the group's actions were interfering with the legitimate investigations and potentially compromising real criminal cases. Time to play our Get the Hell Out of Here music. The organization has since been known for using social media to promote various unsubstantiated claims about activities along the border. Their beliefs have led them into confrontations with property owners and law enforcement agencies. In 2018 and 2019, Meyer was arrested several times for trespassing and other charges arising from the group's unauthorized presence on private and public lands. Don't look for the cops to help you because they just confront them with guns too. Cops would rather stay home than take on armed people like that. Despite these legal challenges, VOP has continued to maintain an active presence in southern Arizona, though with diminished public attention compared to its peak period. The group sparked controversy with a brief operation in Spokane, Washington earlier this year, near where Meyer's second-in-command, Shauna Martin, lives. In Spokane, the groups, again, made false claims about trafficking activities near homeless encampments. Local authorities and homeless advocacy groups objected to their presence, accusing VOP members of harassing and filming vulnerable individuals without consent. At that time, Meyer also spoke of building, quote, a beautiful compound, like Trump might say, in nearby Washtokna. Do I have that pronunciation right? Couldn't possibly correct on the first try. Telegram posts indicate that Meyer has been on the ground in North Carolina since soon after Hurricane Helene. Dangerous guy, making dangerous things happen, maybe even making dangerous things happen for Donald Trump, believe it or not. Wow.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, a lot to watch out for, but don't give up hope. And hey, if you want to shift gears and listen to something slightly different, let's try the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. Let's see what he's got on top of the list here. Democrats went on cutthroat offense, hooray, at a House of Representatives hearing called by the MAGA GOP. Let's check that story out next.